So recently, a bunch of Unaired pilots found their way online, dating back to the 90s. What I want to do is look at these pilots and determine two things. 1. Did it have potential? And 2. How different would popular culture be if this pilot was picked up for series? Today, we're opening up the pilot vault and looking at the pilot for a show called Imperfect Union, a comedy series that stars Zachary Levi. This pilot is from 2007, and he signed on to Chuck not long after it, so it's almost certain that if this show was greenlit for a full series, then he never would have been in Chuck. That's a great show, people don't talk enough about it nowadays. The pilot also stars Ashley Williams, who you may remember as Victoria from How I Met Your Mother. So what is this show about? Well, it's a comedy set in an automobile parts factory. Sounds exciting, I know. Where a young man, played by Levi, has just taken over as the head of the factory, and a young woman, played by Williams, has inherited her father's job as shop steward. I didn't know positions like that could be inherited. I presume it just means that she got the job off her own back, and because she came after him, they're saying inherited. I don't know. They never really explain it. We start with Ashley getting ready for work, and his sister is freaking out about an ugly bridesmaid's dress. This dress comes back into play later. Chekhov's dress. Oh, look who's playing the dad. It's George Wendt, Norm from Cheers. He's quite handy with a car. I'm wondering if this show shares a universe with Poker Face, because there was an episode of that where Cliff from Cheers played a mechanic. If these universes were connected, they could both fix up cars together. I'd watch that. It'd be a better show than this. Her dad starts talking about her car, saying there's a lot of miles on it, but it's still got a few good years left. And it becomes clear that he's talking about himself instead of the car, prompting her to ask if he was sad about his recent retirement. So we're starting this show with the beginning of her career and the end of his overlapping. He mentions how the boss's son is taking over. Enter Zachary Levi. Why does he look so young here? He filmed Chuck not long after this. I swear he isn't that young and thin in Chuck. He's looking like peak John Krasinski in The Office here. Do you remember that episode with the saber triangles, where they referenced how much John Krasinski looked like Zachary Levi? I swear there was even a cardboard cutout of him in that episode. Oh yeah, and Beverly D'Angelo is in this a little. She's barely in it. You may know her from the Vacation movies. She plays Chevy Chase's wife. In this, she plays Zachary Levi's mother, and you'll never guess what his character's name is. Clark. Yeah. That immediately took me right back to those movies. I wonder if this was just a coincidence. I suppose if it wasn't, you can't exactly change the main character's name, simply because Here and Bev say it would remind you of a funnier movie. It's fine that his name is Clark, it's not that distracting. She's barely in this. Since Clark has taken over the business, his dad tells him that he wants to call him every day, so we can essentially micromanage him. This is obviously setting up how he would appear in every single episode had the show went a series. We are then shown some footage of both Clark and Ronnie driving to work. That's Ashley Williams' character's name, by the way. We know this because her friend said it about 5 times.
Hey Ronnie? Ronnie, can you babysit tonight? How beautiful his Aunt Ronnie is. What?
I know I always complain that they never say each other's names in these sitcoms, but I feel like this is overboard a bit. Why did she say this so much? Clark goes to his new office and immediately tries to get rid of the desk, like he's Dick Cavett trying to reboot the late night formula. This establishes that he's not going to be like the old guard. He's gonna be more laid back. He shows off this new approach by going down to the workers' truck for lunch, despite being offered to have his food ordered in. He then tries to hacky sack with them, like he's that weird kid from the Lizzie McGuire show. Ronnie tries to go and see Clark, but she's treated like she shouldn't be there, like it's an episode of Upstairs Downstairs, and a servant just wandered into one of the bedrooms. Now, Zachary Levi and Ashley Williams have this immediate connection, and honestly, I do sense some chemistry there. They have this banter which, while it isn't necessarily funny, it's quite cute. I like them both, and that likability certainly shines through their performance. See, it was interesting in this pilot because they disagreed and fought after initially getting along. But if this show was greenlit for a full series, then they eventually would have hooked up, and that would have just led to the moonlighting effect, where a show quickly falls apart when unresolved sexual tension is resolved. It happens with every show. It happened with Castle, it happened with Bones, and of course Moonlighting, the show the effect got its name from. It always happens with couples where the will they won't they game is played. I can't imagine this show having anything else to do after it gotten these two together. I mean, there's not a lot you can do in a automobiles parts factory, is there? Where does the show go once these two have hooked up? Clark and Ronnie yell at each other, embarrassing themselves in front of all the colleagues. You can tell that Ashley Williams breaks after one of their shouts, but they kept the take in for some reason.
Moron now!
You are, you moron!
You're the moron!
You are!
It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
If this show had gone to series, then these two would constantly be at each other's throats, mirroring how their fathers were at each other's throats for years, before they both retired. But there's a lot less sexual tension between George Wendt and Clark's dad than there is between these two. I mean, I'm saying that, but I have no idea. For all I know, sparks fly when those two men are in the room. George Wendt comes back, and they have quite a nice exchange. Honestly, this script isn't the worst written thing ever. I realise that isn't a glowing review, but it's fair. Ronnie sneaks into a big party, so she can show up Clark in front of loads of rich people. But for some reason, she thinks it's a good idea to show up in that dreadful bridesmaid's dress from the start. A guy shows up who I'm 50% sure is Dean Pelton from Community. Somehow, Clark does not spot Ronnie, despite her standing out like a sore thumb. Then Ronnie is kicked out of the party, so she goes to her local bar, where she finds Clark, who's been looking for her. We then meet Ronnie's boyfriend, who was the singer on stage. Clark, clearly, finds the fact that she's dating this moron hilarious, which you can just tell bugs her. Ronnie and Clark agree to start getting along, in an attempt to stop their parents from fighting. George Wendt and Clark's dad are basically enemies, and them meeting again would only lead to more trouble. I am kinda sad we never got to see that shouting match, but I suppose we were teasing it for a future episode. A future episode we will never get to see, as this pilot was not commissioned for a full series, and it was never aired up until a few weeks ago when it found its way online. In the final scene, Ronnie and Clark's newfound camaraderie is visualised by Clark leaving his drink at the bar. Ronnie takes a sip of it, and I was thinking, whoa, that's a really subtle allegory for how they are both willing to come round to each other's ways of thinking. But then they throw all subtext out the window by having the bartender basically explain that. They were so close. Had they just cut the scene before the bartender spoke, then this would have been a really good ending scene. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed we never got to see more of this, but if it was a hit, we never would have gotten Zachary Levi in Chuck. So I suppose it's for the better it wasn't picked up. Now, where does this pilot rank among the other unaired pilots we've spoken about on Pilot Vault? Well, I quite liked it. The script was decent, so already we're looking at the higher end of the rankings. I'd say it was definitely better written than Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, and I probably enjoyed it more than Rex Is Not Your Lawyer, but it had a lot less potential in that show, so I'm gonna stick it between the two of them. Like I mentioned earlier, this show would have definitely suffered from the moonlighting effect once these two characters got together. All the fun would have dried up and that would have been the end, but they would have carried on making it because, you know, money. Right, if you want me to talk about more unaired pilots, then leave a comment below letting me know, and subscribe, help us reach 4K. Right, I'll let you go.